In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to create this cool responsive navigation with a logo in the left, and on the right we have 4 list items with a nice hover animation. But the cool part is, when we're going on the mobile version, you can see that now the list items became a button, and when it's clicked, all the list items will slide in nicely from the right. Clicked again and they will go away very nicely and smoothly. Isn't it cool? Well, don't take just my word for it. You can see that even the dog agrees that is a cool responsive navigation. So let's learn how to build it. Alright, here we have an empty CodePen project with nothing inside. First up, let's create the HTML markup. We're going to have a nav, and inside the nav we're going to have the logo on the left and the UL on the right. For now I don't have a logo, so I'm going to create a paragraph saying Florian Pop, and on the right we have the UL with 4 list items and 4 links inside it. Let's say this will be home, we're going to have blog, then this will be about and contact. Alright, that's all we need for now for the HTML. Later we're going to add the button, but let's style this nav for now. In the CSS, first I'm going to import the font, Poppins, so we have some nice font on the page, and let's apply it on the body. Font, family, Poppins, and sans serif as default. Alright, now the font looks much better. Let's also add box sizing, border box on all the elements. So this is a nice reset for all the elements on the page. Now let's focus on styling the nav. In order to have the logo on the left, well, in this case the paragraph, but you can swap it out with an image if you want, and the UL on the right, we're going to use display flex. Display flex, this will align everything on the row, because by default the flex direction property is set to row. But now we need to add space between these two elements. So how we can do that? Very easily with justify content space between. And now the UL will be pushed to the right because we want to have space between the elements. Awesome. Let's center everything vertically with align item center. Let's make this nav stand apart by adding a background color on the body. Let's go with EF, EF, EF. Alright, and now on the nav we can have background color white, so we can see exactly where our nav is. Okay, you can see that we have a bit of a margin there on the body, so let's remove that. This is applied by default on the body. Now let's add just a bit of padding here on the left, so we have a bit of space in the left and the right of the nav. Maybe padding 15 pixels. Alright, perfect. Now let's move our focus from the nav to the UL. We want to do pretty much the same thing to the UL. So nav UL, we want it to be display flex, so all the items will be in a row. And let's also remove these bullets with list style type none. Alright, awesome. The UL also has some padding and some margin, and let's remove those so we don't have any issues. Good, perfect. It's not visible, but it will disturb the flow of the UL on the page. Next up, let's style the UL LIs with a margin 0 on the top and 10 pixels on the left and the right. Or if you want, you can add only on the left some margin, but then it will disturb how it will look on mobile. So we're going to add on the left and on the right 10 pixels. The last thing to style the list items, well, actually the links inside it, because they have this blue color and we don't want that. So let's change the color to, we have this color of 2C405E. Awesome, and let's remove the text decoration. Alright, look at that, now it looks much better. We can see that we still have some space here we don't want, and that's because our paragraph inside the nav. If you have an image, you won't have this issue, but the paragraph by default has some margin. So let's remove that. And now it looks smaller and much better. Good. Let's add also color on the paragraph. I have a color of 0594 EC. All right. And let's style it to look more like a logo. Text transform uppercase, letter spacing 1 pixels, and I think we can make it bold. So let's make it font weight bold. All right, look at that. Now it looks like a logo, although it's just a paragraph. But we don't have a logo with my name, so, oh well, it should work. If we're hovering now over the list items here, well, actually over the links, we don't see anything. So we can create a nice transition of a small border-like element. And we're going to create that on the after pseudo element on the A tag. Alright, that sounds a bit complicated maybe, but let me show you. So here we're going to target the A, but we want to create another element on top of it on the after pseudo element. By default, we need a content because otherwise it won't show up. Let's make it a weight of 100% of the parent, a height of 2 pixels, and the background color, we want the same color we have on the list items. So let's copy that. All right, good. It's not yet visible because it's not positioned. So let's position it. We're going to use position absolute. And now you can see already that it appeared, but it's not where we want it. If we say top 0 and left 0, well, actually it's bottom 0. We want them to be somewhere around here, and it's left 0. We want it to be just about here, and when we hover over, we want them to go up. But by default, a position absolute element will be relative to its first parent, which is not position static. And in our case, we don't have a parent which doesn't have a position other than static, because all by default are static, so it will be relative to the body. In order to change that, we can change the position on the A to be relative. And now you can see that the lines appear nicely underneath the list items. Awesome. Now let's push them down, and we only want to show them when we hover over the element. So how we're going to do that? Let's put a bottom of -18 pixels. This is a value I found that it works, because that's the space between the link and the edge of the nav. And in order to make it disappear, we can put overflow hidden on the nav. So now everything which is outside of the nav, of the width and its height, it will be hidden. Alright. And what we want is when we hover over the A, so let's do the hover, we want the after pseudo element to go back up. And we can do that by applying transform translate on the y-axis -15 pixels. So when we hover over, we want to push it up 15 pixels. Let's see how this looks now. Look at that. It's like it's appearing. It doesn't look like it's sliding because we don't have a transition. So let's add it. Transition on the transform property for, let's say, 0.2 seconds and an ease animation. Oops, my bad. This should go on the after, not on the A, because this is what we are transforming. Now let's try it again. When we hover over, look at that, the nice line appears underneath, which is pretty nice. Goody goody. The last thing we're going to add on the desktop version is a bit of box shadow on the nav, so it will pop up a little bit. So let me see, I have here already a box shadow prepared. Let me copy it. So we want 0 pixels on the right and left, 3 pixels down, 5 pixels radius, and a bit of black color with 0.1 opacity. And now you can see that it looks like it's closer to us with that box shadow. Awesome. Now let's work on the responsive part, because now if we are zooming in, you can see that nothing happens, nothing good happens. So let's fix this. So let's go and create a media query. Media on max width 480 pixels. So when the screen width is smaller than 481 pixels, so maximum of 480 pixels, we want to change the UL. Let's see how it looks now. And what we want to do is to get the UL out of the flow of the nav and make it be floating on the screen. So UL, we want it to be position fixed. So we're getting it out of the flow. Now let's put it inside here in a nice box. With top 80 pixels, pushing it down 80 pixels, let's give it a background color of white so we can see it as a box. Alright, let's give it that box shadow we have on the nav, so we'll make it pop up a bit. Awesome. Now, its width should be something like, let's say, 80%. 80% of the parent we want this UL to be. In order to place the list items on top of each other, we want to change the flex direction. Flex direction column. So now the list items will be on top of each other. One thing I forgot to do is let's add an opacity to these lines. So here on the after, we want to have an opacity of 0. And we're going to add opacity of 1 when we hover over. So let's see that on desktop. Alright, something like that. Because now they're hidden, so it doesn't bother us. Alright, good. We haven't set the left position. So because we have 80% of the width, let's have a left position set to 10%. Because by setting it to 10% on the left, we're going to have remaining 10% on the right. So it's perfectly centered. Let's center the list items here with text align center. And on the list elements, let's add a bit of margin. Margin 15 pixels. Oh, I added the nav here for all the UL, so it's overwriting it. So let's add nav UL here and nav UL li here. Alright, now it will be overwriting it. Perfect. I added nav UL because it's the only one UL we have now, but we could have other ULs on the page, so we don't want to confuse those. You could also have a class on the UL if you want, and then you don't need the selector to be that deep. Now we don't have a hover effect on mobile, but if we would, we still have that nice transition. We're almost done, but we have some more stuff to do. Initially, we want the nav to be outside of the viewport on the right. And we can achieve that by, well, actually the same thing as we did with these lines, but instead of pushing them down, we're going to push it to the right. So let's do that by setting the transform on the UL to be translate X, this time 120%. And now it will be out of the viewport. And how we're going to get it back? Well, we're going to have a special class on the UL of show. This will be toggled in JavaScript with a button, which we're going to add in a second. And when this show class is added, we want the transform to be back to 0. Transform translate 0. Alright, let's add our button. Here between the paragraph and the UL, we want to have a button. And inside it, let's paste a hamburger icon. This is the HTML entity for the hamburger icon. And now you can see it appear there. Alright, now let's style this button a bit. Maybe we can even give it a class this time. Class of burger, because it's a nice burger. Alright, let's go into CSS and we want to style it here. Nav burger. Oh well, I guess we don't need the nav selector because we have a specific class. You can see that the button looks like a default button. So let's remove the border. Let's remove the background color by setting it to transparent. We can increase the font size to something like 24 pixels. Well, maybe too much. 22 pixels. Okay, good. And let's add a color to it. The color we have for the paragraph, which is this. And now it looks more like a hamburger button. I think the font size is still too big and it pushes the content. So let's make it 20. All right, this should be good. So now when we're pressing this, we want to show the UL. So we want to apply the class of show on the UL. So in order to do that, we need to add some JavaScript. And for that, let's add first some IDs here, burger, and here also on the UL, we want to add an ID of, well, I guess we don't need an ID. We can target it as we did in CSS with nav.ul. Let's do that. So we have an ID of burger on the button, and we will target this UL. All right, so burger, we want to do document get element by ID burger, and we also want the UL. So let's, well, actually no, const UL will be document, and we can use the query selector and say nav.ul because that's the only nav.ul we have on the page, right? Good. So now when we're pressing the burger, we're going to add an event listener on the click event. And what we want to happen, we want the UL to have a class list. So the class list on the UL, we want to toggle the show class. If we click it once, it will add it the first time because it doesn't have it. And if we click it the second time, it will remove it. So it will toggle between the having the show class and not having the show class. All right, let's see. Will this work? If we didn't mess it up, then it should. So let's see, click. All right, look at that. When we're clicking the hamburger button, it's appearing on the screen, the UL. Awesome. Now let's add the same transition. Well, something like we have here. Transition on the UL. So we don't want it to pop in the screen like that. We want to have a smooth transition. So I guess we can put this. We want transition transform of 0. Let's make it 4. So now when we're pressing this button, look at that nice transition. So yeah, this is the cool responsive navigation with cool transitions. A lot of cool. Let's do some more improvements. Here we have the button have that overline, sorry. We can remove that by setting burger active. We want outline to be none. All right, so we don't have that. Oh, actually, I think it's on the focus. All right, my bad. So it's on the focus, but now we don't really know when it's clicked. So a nice thing will be when we're pressing on this to have an X. How we can do that? We can remove the HTML entity and we can create our own bars, which will nicely rotate and transition into their position. So from bars, it will be an X. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to do a tutorial on that. Oh, and I remembered we have one small issue on desktop. The burger button here is displayed and we don't want that, so display none on desktop, and we want it to show only on mobile. So here, burger display block. So now when we're zooming in, we have the burger appearing. If we're clicking it, it will toggle the UL. So awesome! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and as I said, if you want to see a tutorial specific on how to create these double bars which will rotate and transition into place to form an X, let me know and I'll do it in the next tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. See you in the next one. Bye!